Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles. You might have noticed my co-host Tracy Kawa is missing today. She is stuck in two different school car lines picking up her son. My special guest today is Amy Layne. Amy recently joined the ResiBrand Shiver as the Director of Franchise Development. Now, what is a shiver? It's a clever collective noun for a group of sharks. A shiver is all about getting after it and pursuing success with a fierce determination while having a bit of fun along the way. Resi Brands includes Garage Up, Pink's Window Services, and that one painter. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. You know, your energy in our pre-conversation was just delightful. So I'm really looking forward to learning more about you. But let's start with how you got into franchising.
Sure. Yeah, happy to share. So I got into franchising actually right out of college. And so I think similarly to most people you talk to in the franchise community, I fell into franchising. It wasn't something that I studied in college, although now there are so many programs at universities that have franchising, which is amazing. But I was actually going to get into staffing or recruiting out of college. And one of my sister's friends, I'm the youngest of three girls. And so one of my sister's friends was working at a company called Fran Connect at the time, which is a supplier in the franchise industry. And she reached out and was just chatting with me saying, "Are you excited about your upcoming job?" And I was like, "To be honest, not really. It's kind of a job." And she was like, "Well, if you're open to it, we're hiring and we have a really enthusiastic culture. And I think that you'd be great for this sales development representative role, an intro into sales." So I went in for an in-person interview, loved the company, the culture, what they were doing, and joined Fran Connect. So that was kind of my intro into the franchise community. Quickly fell in love with who I was talking to. My role mostly consisted of cold outreach, so cold calling, LinkedIn, emailing, and I think that is, a tough role, but when you're doing it in the franchise space, it honestly made it fun. I was getting to hear entrepreneurial stories and learning from people and just being surrounded by this group of amazing founders in the
Mm.
space and people in franchise development. And I was actually calling on people in the role that I'm in currently. So I ended up really having an aspiration to get into franchise development because of that first role that I was doing. But kind of in the segue or in the in between, I also worked with another supplier called Thrive. So I was reached out to by someone there, really. With the message of, are you interested in bringing starting basically a franchising segment of this already publicly traded multi-million dollar organization. So that was super exciting to me and something that was different than what I was doing, but I could use some of my old skills that I was already learning, and shake it up and make a presence or a splash in the franchising space for Thrive. And then enjoyed about 2.5, 3 years with them, and got over now into the franchisor side where I'm working with Resi Brands. I had met the founder, Stephen Montgomery, actually 2 years ago at a Springboard conference when he had just started that one painter. He had a couple locations then. And now, as you mentioned, we also have Garage Up and Pinks, and he founded the platform or parent company as well. So it's been a journey, and I'm excited to be here and continue to work in the franchising space.
Your journey is, like you said, many of us have had this kind of fall into it kind of opportunity and learning about franchising, and then we fall in love with it,
Yeah.
right? Um, so and each time you went from Fran Connect, a wonderful company, wonderful products and services, that they offer to thrive. I have an odd question about that. I mean, Fran Connect is massive, right?
Yeah,
This Thrive sounds like, as a publicly traded company, was even larger. Is that right?
correct.
So, what was the difference kind of going from that to Thrive, which is massive, and what the culture was there, to now with ResiBrands, which is a smaller organization? You're making a lot of changes. So tell me about that transition from Fran Connect and then the next culture, and then of course the ResiBrands.
Yeah, sure. So it's interesting with them all being different sizes and at different
Mhm.
stages of their growth as organizations. And honestly, so one thing that I always knew that I was good at following a system and being coachable and kind of following the process just as with franchising. And what I didn't realize until getting into my past two roles is that I also enjoy creating processes. And with Fran Connect being established, in the market, there were already processes set in place, and I was learning from them, but also getting to build upon them. And then when I got into Thrive, as you mentioned, it's a large publicly traded organization. There's a lot of things that are established, but
Mhm.
their core focus had prior to myself coming on had been small business. So all the resources in that front were set out and laid out. But when it came to that franchising space, even though we had 3,000 employees at the company, our team was very small. And so I got to have almost that entrepreneurial
Mhm.
mindset of being able to help create and form this franchise arm or leg of the business, and had a lot of audacity and creativity to be able to present Thrive in different ways than it had been in the past. So it's been great to have that kind of shake up and learning of different organizations.
I love your passion, Amy. I got to tell you, and your willingness to continue to learn and try new things. I just find that absolutely fascinating, whether it's a different size company, a different products and services, going from supplier to now franchisor and
Yeah.
building that. And at the core of it, this part of you that is systematic, appreciates that, knows how to leverage it, but also knows how to create the systems when necessary. But the other part that's at the heart of everything you're talking about is that entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
right? With founders that are working with Fran Connect, companies that are working with Thrive, and now Resi Brands working with the entrepreneurs that are going to run their individual locations in their territory. So
Yeah.
I'm already seeing some themes in your life, but um, talk to me a little bit about where this theme of learning and growing and changing and pushing yourself might have come from.
Yeah. So I think two-parted, honestly. And one piece of it you and I were kind of chatting about earlier, and another piece just came to me now. And so part one, I think, is growing up, I was always doing a million different activities. Shout out to my mom who would drive me to here and there and across town. And I would always tell people when I was 6 years old, I did six different activities. So I was doing dance, I was doing swimming, cheerleading, soccer. What am I missing? Girl Scouts. And what was the other one that I
I
can't
should
think
have
of it
wrote it. Oh,
now.
I should have wrote it down.
Dance, swim, cheer, gymnastics. That was it.
Gymnastics.
But anyways, so all six of those things. And, I would wake up before school and go to swim practice. And then after school, do cheerleading. And after that, and I had this whole schedule, and I was always kind of all over the place with different activities, from soccer to swimming to cheerleading, all across the board. And I think that having that schedule at such a young age, with also having each of the different coaches along the way and their different styles of coaching and training, that I was able to have that background, which then now in my current life, I feel that when I get comfortable with things, when I've really learned things, I need a shakeup. So it's kind of having that change and getting myself uncomfortable, and with the current change that I just made with now being on the franchisor side, I was really yearning and craving for that because I want to learn that other aspect or side of franchising with only having been on the supplier side, wanting to get kind of that other aspect as well. And the other piece too, that I was just thinking of, which didn't even mention to you earlier, but growing up, my dad and my uncle actually founded their own technology business. And so I think innately, I never really had thought too much about this in terms of my own entrepreneurial yearn and kind of my work ethic and things like that. But I think that core that experience really helped me at my core in watching
Mhm.
him and my uncle grow this thing and get to learn things innately through him, as I have grown myself. So
I'm so glad you shared that other part of the story,
yeah,
because you're right. When you're raised with kind of an entrepreneurial spirit around you, even if you're not completely involved, they're talking about it, they're expressing it, they're participating in it. So you're going to
yeah,
catch it. I also like that you pointed out this in all of your 6 activities, you had various coaches, each with their own style, but all with an outcome of getting you better and better at what you were
yeah,
doing. And you mentioned that a part of who you are is you're coachable. You learn, but not only are you coachable and you want to learn, you will not stay in a place of I've mastered it. You will push yourself to that next place. Um, so can you give me a story or an example of when you were out of your comfort zone, and how you might have dealt with it?
yeah. So I think going back to the transition from high school to college, I had an experience where I had my dream school, just as everyone does, or some people do, I should say. And I didn't get into that dream school. So I was a little bit crushed at the time, but figured I could either sulk or I could achieve that dream eventually. So I ended up going to another school for my freshman year and ended up doing really well, got straight A's, got myself a scholarship actually at that school, but still chose to stick to my goal, my plan, that I wanted to achieve was getting into that dream school. So after freshman year, I transferred to the school that I had been wanting to go to for quite some time. And so we had that kind of high there, and then a little bit of a low when I realized transitioning or transferring wasn't as seamless as I thought it was going to be. I went from a small university to a large university with a football team and all of that, which is what I wanted or thought I wanted. And then in that transition, it was tough to adjust and make a new group of friends and, get recognized in class where there were, 1,000 people in an auditorium, when I wasn't used to that before. And so I think that was a big, shift of being uncomfortable for me and having to make that change because I told myself that this was the goal that I wanted to achieve, and here it was right in my face, and it wasn't going as planned. So again, I could either sulk and wish I had gone back to the prior university I'd been at, or I could make the most of it and turn it into the dream school that I had wanted to go to, which is what I chose to do. And got myself out of my comfort zone, met random friends that I would not have met, tried to get myself out there. And I think that has helped me honestly in my current role and my past role as well, in terms of going to conferences and events and meeting people. There's IFA, which is what, 3,000 plus people, and it can be very intimidating to walk into a conference room or walk into a happy hour or whatever the case may be, when you don't know people. And I think that my past experience from that really helped shape that current setting for me, and has made something that's uncomfortable a little less uncomfortable.
Well, I would argue not only by doing that and allowing yourself to be uncomfortable, you kind of like being uncomfortable now. But back,
Yeah.
because, and the natural tendency as human beings is to kind of pull back into our comfort zone. But you have exercised past that so many times that now it's actually just a challenge and kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of my perception of you. Um,
Yeah.
and you're right. In these conferences and new environments, new companies, to be comfortable being uncomfortable is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because even doing something like what we're doing right now, having a podcast or a webinar or a public speaking type of conversation makes me very uncomfortable, but I like to do it and put myself in that situation, because I think that it can only help me grow. And honestly, one day, I've always thought about it, I would love to be able to be a public kind of motivational speaker in some sense. And again, though, it's one of those things that makes me very uncomfortable, but I always have volunteered to try to do it. I don't know why.
I'm,
So I
I'm
guess you're kind of determining why here.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you because you're definitely an excellent model to others to push themselves, and the joy that I see on your face by pushing yourself, trying something new, facing the fear and doing it anyway, kind of thing. Who knows? Who knows what's the future for that? It's a motivational speaker, an author, a podcaster. Who knows what all you're going to be up to? I'm going to watch you, though, like a hawk as your career continues to evolve. So very exciting. Thank you for sharing those stories.
Yeah.
I would like to shift gears a little bit because I did a little bit of research on ResiBrands.
Yeah.
And I'm very impressed with the positioning they take. And I can see why you're a great fit just from what little I've learned about you today. This shiver idea is about doing whatever it takes to get where you want to go and taking risks and working hard, and stepping up to the challenge, that whole kind of culture. Um, and then having fun at the same time. I think it's a beautiful culture. Can you address a little bit about what you perceived, being brand new into the Resi brands? What was it that attracted you to the organization? Besides, it was something new and I want to do a challenge and blah, blah, blah. But
Sure.
what
Yeah.
attracted you?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I think that there are several different components that attracted me. One of which, and I was going to say this is obvious, but maybe it's not too obvious, but the fact that Stephen has built this platform company. So it's not just that one painter anymore, but it's also Garage Up, and it's also Pinks, and TBD on other, different brands in the future. But that growth potential, I think, is amazing for not only myself and anyone that works at ResiBrands, but also for our franchisees that we're bringing on board. And by the way, ResiBrands stands for residential. That's what the Resi piece is. And so all three of the current brands that we have are servicing the residential market, also the commercial market as well. But if you think about, you have someone come out and paint your house, and then you may realize your house is beautiful and it has a facelift because it's painted, but the windows are dirty. So
Mhm.
then they can refer someone over to Pink's windows, and then you have this whole kind of model, and then you need your garage done because your paint and your windows look great. And so for the potential franchise candidate, they can also have this great building block as well. So that was one kind of obvious piece to me that stood out. But another main piece or component is support. And that is something that I was looking for in my past roles in technology. Support is always so important. And I would tell brands that were evaluating our software at the time to say, hey, look, go evaluate other brands, but make sure you ask about support, because finding the technology is half the battle, but actually implementing it is the other piece. And so I think even more so in the franchising world, in terms of, you're investing, not only just the technology you're using, but you're investing in your future here. And so you need to feel supported. And that was something that I felt off the bat in meeting Stephen, the founder, but also too then meeting the team and seeing how many people they have on board, or we have on board, to support the franchisees. Also too, we have two in-house components, Resi Connect and Resi Creative. So Resi Connect is our internal appointment center, and Resi Creative is our internal marketing center. So having those teams both in-house, I think has really also been an advantage, and something I've noticed that differentiates ResiBrands in general. So but really, really excited about it.
I'm excited to watch your career evolve, and of course, ResiBrands continue to grow. It's interesting you use the word platform, that they have a platform, and that's an excellent description. Can you get into a little bit what you mean by that for folks that don't know what that means? A platform that can support many different brands. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And so with ResiBrands specifically, our corporate team, especially when it comes to those two components I was speaking of Resi Connect and Resi Creative, those internal teams, in addition to the leadership and support and manpower, they are not only servicing one of our brands, but it's all three brands. I think that also comes into play when there's things as technology, like I was doing in the past, or other vendor relationships, that there can be a benefit at scale when you have those multiple brands versus someone that's just starting up and trying to get in with a supplier. But in general, I think that the platform piece is franchising. I guess I should back up in general, as we all have heard, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And so I think that's the franchise system in general. But I think this added layer, this platform layer, this parent layer, can really help take that a step further in terms of support and growth and ideas, and things like that.
I agree. I call it a hybrid in my business at Zorkel, profiles, where you can share these resources and the intellect of others in all these brands. What you learned over here, you can share here, and what you're using here, you can use there. So it's
Yeah.
really good use of resources, but it creates almost a mastermind in and of itself by having that. And then there's this collaboration, like you said. If you're in the window business, you could also do the garage, or at least refer to the garage and the painting. So it's just a beautiful hybrid, a franchise hybrid, and is what I call it.
I like that.
So yeah, I love it. I love what you're up to. So I had another question, and I don't know if you've had enough time at ResiBrands to fully be entrenched in this.
Oh boy.
But I understand that ResiBrand offers a bit of a discount to veterans, folks in the clergy, and entrepreneurs under the age of 30.
Yes.
That blew my mind, because when I think of uh, this idea of 30-year-olds with the vim and the vigor and the drive, we need to find ways to support them, right? So
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about that focus.
Yeah. So I, one, in general, Resi Brands is all about giving back and helping the community. So, within each of our brands, we have different programs. So, we have the Paint It Forward, the Elevate. And so, those are different programs to give back to the community in terms of we'll paint a house for someone in need or a garage, etc. And so, that in mind, and that's really the focus and the driver of honestly why Steven started franchising in general, was to just kind of give back to the community and what he's built, spreading that kind of wealth. And so I think that's where it stems from, of having those discounts for those different groups, and just wanting to enable people to get into business ownership and entrepreneurship, and taking away some of those barriers of entry there.
Yeah. And definitely uh it's a beautiful way to do it, especially for young people who haven't had the time to
Yeah,
establish themselves yet. Let's give them a little bit of a leg up so they can get where they need to go. And then
yeah,
on top of that, as an organization, you guys are focused on the coaching, the mentoring, which of course you're attracted to because
yeah,
everything from being 6 years old all the way up. So there's this mentoring, this coaching that your franchisees get, and the partnership you guys have with John Maxwell, who everybody
yeah,
loves, especially my generation. We love him.
yeah.
That's a great thing. Well, before I get too far down the road, I want to make sure people know how to get hold of you and how they can learn more about ResiBrands. So how would one do that?
Sure. Multiple different ways. I am on LinkedIn, AMYLAYNE. That's my full name. You can also email me at amy@resibrands.com. So just my first name at resibrands.com. You can check out ResiBrands, our website. We also have brand specific pages for That One Painter, for Garage Up, and for Pinks. All of them also are all over social media. Pinks has a really cool Instagram, so they're big there. That One Painter has a lot of YouTube videos, and Garage Up is all over everything as well. I also have my own personal franchise TikTok called Franchise Friday. I hadn't even told you about that.
Oh,
And I try to do it every Friday. I really have been slacking lately, so I'll start picking it up again. But it's just tips and tricks of people in the franchise industry, just to try to spread knowledge and wealth, both suppliers and franchisors. So if you're on TikTok, you can follow me there. But I post them on my LinkedIn as well.
that's so fabulous. Again, a giving back, right? It's the
Yeah.
same kind of feel. So I want to know if you're going to put your gymnastics, your dance, your soccer talents to use in these TikTok videos.
Well, I did do a back handspring on one of my past LinkedIn posts recently. So I put a little bit of the gymnastics cheerleading talent to use, I guess.
Why not? Bring your personality into it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Being genuine, that's why I love social media these days too, is because it just shows genuine personalities. Well, sometimes people can fabricate it, but I think that it can really come out on social tools as well.
Yes, for sure. Well, Amy, you are a delight. I have so enjoyed having you on the show. Um, I just find it fascinating how this 6-year-old that was being challenged and put in various out of the comfort zone situations with great coaches, how that has influenced your ability to go past the comfort zone again and again to a point where you actually thrive and enjoy pushing yourself past that. And I'm guessing you're going to bring that kind of attitude and focus to where you are at ResiBrands. So thanks again for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking with you.
And to those of you listening in today to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits have made, share this video with Amy Layne. She's going to be famous someday, so you're going to want to do that. And of course, subscribe, like, whatever you're supposed to do. And we'll see you next week on another episode.